All right. Well, it's 6 o'clock and we know that your time is precious, Colleen. So if you're ready, let's just dive in.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready. Y'all hit me with it.
Well, first off, thank you to Colleen so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and visit and chat with the Peloton Moms Book Club this evening. Your books are always recommended in the book club. And a special thank you to all of the moms who've read It Ends With Us and who recommended it to their friends, who've bought multiple copies and given it to their friends. So thanks to everybody who made it to the live tonight, and to all of the moms who are going to catch this on the recording, because we know how mom life is. We really appreciate you circling back and catching this chat with Colleen.
Yes, thank you. Everything is falling apart.
Well, let me get the introduction for you and so you can get situated. Colleen Hoover is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Slammed, Hopeless, Maybe Someday, Maybe Not, Ugly Love, Confess, November 9th, It Ends With Us, Without Merit, and All Your Perfects. She has won the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Romance 3 years in a row for Confess in 2015, It Ends With Us in 2016, and Without Merit in 2017. Confess was adapted into a 7-episode online series, and in 2015, Colleen and her family founded the Bookworm Box, a bookstore and monthly subscription service offering signed novels donated by authors, and all of the profits are given to various charities each month to help those in need. Colleen lives in Texas with her husband and her 3 boys, which basically makes us nearly best friends already, as I live in Texas too.
So, oh, do you? Where at?
Down in between Houston and Galveston.
Oh, okay. We just moved away from Galveston. I miss it so much.
Oh, did you? I had seen some beach pictures, but I was like, is that Galveston? So
yeah, we headed down there in 2020, but had some family members that needed us back in Northeast Texas. So we were only there for about a year, but we love it there.
I saw on your social like 2 months ago that you had left some signed copies at the Barnes & Noble Bay Area location, and that's my Barnes & Noble, but I had my kids.
No
way. I'm not going to get there fast enough.
They were so nice. That was such a fun experience.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks again, Colleen. So tell us how you came to write your first novel and your path to publishing.
It was a strange one. Very different, I think, from the way a lot of people do it, because I was 31. It was actually 10 years ago. What is this, November? This month is kind of when I started writing my first novel. My middle child was in a community theater play, and I worked 11-hour days. And then as soon as my job was over, I worked 7 in the morning till 6 at night. And then he had play practice from 6 to 9 every night. And so I would sit with him while they were rehearsing, and was just bored sitting in the audience for a whole month, every night. And so I started writing this story while I would wait for them. And then it just ended up turning into a whole book. And I never thought in a million years, that this would happen. I put it on Kindle so that we had bought my grandmother a Kindle, and I wanted her to read it. And so I had put it on Amazon for free for a few days, just so my friends and family could read it. And I wasn't even calling it a book. I was saying, I wrote this story, I put it on Amazon, y'all get it before I take it off, And, but while it was up for free, you get like 5 free days when you self-publish a book. And it had about 200 downloads. And then when I had to put a price on it, people started buying it. And I remember calling my mom one day, freaking out. And I was like, 6 people bought my book today, and I don't even know who they are. And it was just a really fun experience, but it just kind of snowballed from there. And within 5 months, I think, of having it on Amazon, it hit the New York Times as a self-published book. I didn't have an agent or a publisher. I ended up, I had a friend of mine who was using an agent, and reached out to her to kind of help me, because I was getting offers from publishing houses that I didn't know if they were legitimate or not. And it just kind of went from there. I ended up selling 2 books to them. and kind of have just been doing the same thing ever since. I sometimes publish and still self-publish, and I sometimes will sell the books to a publisher. It just kind of depends on where I'm at in my life at that moment, and whether I have time to do everything myself, because I really do enjoy self-publishing. But yeah, it's been 10 years now, and 20 something books later, it's been a wild ride.
Definitely. That's such a unique story. I mean, I don't think that everybody can go out and self-publish and get the success that you've had. I think, it was hard work, a good story, and a little bit of luck maybe, or is there some sort of special?
I absolutely tell everyone it was definitely good luck and good timing. I feel like if I wrote that book now, it would get lost in the shuffle. Back then there weren't as many books releasing and there weren't as many self-published authors. So I am very aware that, that it has a lot to do with the time that I got into self-publishing when I wrote this book. And, just the fact that I wrote a book that happened to fall into this new adult category that was very popular at the time that I had never even heard of. And it was just a combination of right decisions that ended up, kind of getting me off the ground. And I hate like when people say like, oh, how did you do it? Give us your secrets, because I'm like, I don't know that it can be replicated anymore. It's very hard for, to get a book to reach an audience if you don't have a platform. So, it's like a double-edged sword when I try to give advice to people, because I'm like, well, this is how I did it, but I don't know that it's possible at this point in time anymore.
Right. It's a bit of a lightning doesn't strike the same place twice kind of situation. Right. So you started out writing books that were geared towards young adult audience and pioneered that genre called new adult. So what is NA, and what's the difference between writing for younger or older audiences? How do you adapt?
Well, actually going back to that, like I said, I had no idea what new adult was. I still honestly don't really know what new adult is. I've seen so many different people explain it so many different ways. I look at it like it's kind of like about people in their formative years, going to college, new relationships, a little bit of more mature content than your YA audience. But I never set out to write a new adult book, whatever genre I happen to write in. It's not because I wanted to write a book in that genre. I just sit down with a story in mind, and then whatever it ends up being when the story is done is what it ends up being. That's kind of why I'm all over the place between like, I do a thriller, a paranormal, a YA, a women's fiction. I don't like being, put into one genre.
I love that about you. You're not put into one box, and you've got that liberty to take risks and do what you want to do. That's fantastic. So
yeah, I feel very fortunate that, I don't think I'm known as a certain type of writer. I don't know, maybe I am, but I don't feel like it, like that I have to deliver a certain type of book. My readers have been very supportive with me being all over the place. And that's really great, because I don't know that I could function if I had to be organized in any sense.
Okay. You've written so many books that have gone on to be bestsellers. I've lost count of how many weeks you've been #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, even backlist books having a place on the prestigious list. It Ends With Us was published in 2016 and is back around on the book of the month option this month.
Right,
so,
right.
What has this all been like for you?
It's been insane, honestly. Like when the book came out, It Ends With Us did well. It hit the New York Times for 1 week, and I was super excited. And then it fell off the list, and I was like, well, that was a fun, release. And in my head, I thought that's as well as a book could do. And so, I just have been super appreciative at all the people that have bought that book. And then, this past year, TikTok kind of blew it up again. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that these kind of, I've always been an ebook seller. Like 90 to 95% of my sales are ebook, but this year I would say 90% of my sales are paperback. So it's just a whole different crowd, a whole different, like my books are in stores now, and they've really never been in stores. So it's really interesting being able to walk into a bookstore and see a display, and it's mind blowing. Yeah, like when I was at that Barnes and Noble where you live, like, you know, my sister and I walked upstairs and they had a whole table with my books on them. It's been insane. Like, I don't think it's really sunk in yet how different this year has been.
Well, enjoy it while it lasts. I mean, I hope that it continues on. We definitely promoted that, you know, It Ends With Us was a book of the month option because we have a lot of moms who enjoy that subscription. It's just fun getting something new every month. So,
right.
Speaking of Booktalk, Isabel Abrams had asked, Booktalk is its own force to be reckoned with. Do you think it has assisted in bringing your amazing books to the forefront and helped to create a new cult following for your books?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't feel like the paperback sales would have taken off this year if it weren't for Booktalk. I do think that I get a lot of emails and questions like about how I did it. And I'm like, I didn't do it. Like, it just happened. Like, I've been on TikTok for several years, but I'm not very active over there. I think at the beginning of this year, I had like 5,000 followers, and I don't post that often, maybe once every few months. And so it's nothing I did. It's not any promotion I did at all for it. It just kind of was one of the few books that picked up this year. And I would log on and notice I went from like 5 to 15,000 followers, and then 15 to 50,000. And it's just been insane. TikTok is, it's definitely its own world right now, and a huge force in the whole publishing industry. Like, they're having to push, I would say 60% of new releases, I heard, to next year, because they just don't have enough printers right now to print all the paperbacks that are being demanded. Because that's the difference with TikTok, is everyone likes paperbacks over there, and it's made such a big difference in how ebooks were so popular, and now paperbacks are really making a comeback.
Yeah, when we were talking to Ariel about booking this chat, she's like, let me send you a paperback, because I'm primarily an ebook reader. And she's like, wait, we're having a problem with printing the paperbacks right now. So that makes sense.
Crazy.
Well, I follow you on your other socials, Instagram and your cohorts of Facebook fan group, and you're always making me laugh. And I love how authentic you are. So how do you, as a parent and a person with a full-time job, also manage to find time to be funny and online so frequently?
I've had my account since before I started writing, and I just continued to treat them how I would have treated them whether I wrote books or not. And I think that's kind of the difference, is it doesn't really feel like a commercial. Like, I'm still, putting my everyday stuff on there with my kids and my, just my crazy life. And I don't make it part of my job. Like, I don't say, I need to post 5 times this week, or, I need to do this and this and this. I don't have a schedule. I don't have a plan. If I feel like posting, I'll post something. If I don't, I don't. I just think that embracing the chaos has helped a little bit. I just keep it to where I still enjoy it. I don't want it to feel like a job.
Yeah, totally understand. I remember once again, it was a few months back, you had posted something on your Instagram, and you had this gorgeous makeup on, and she's like, do you like my new makeup look? And it was like, you were like, it's a filter, people. And I was like, girl, what filter is that? It was, your hair was all curly cute. And I was like, man.
And the people that didn't read all the way to the end and thought that was actually me. That was great.
Well, there is a lot of heavy content, and It Ends With Us. So, I had always heard it's best to go into this without knowing a lot about it. And so, judging from the title, I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book, and they're going to end up together. It ends with us, and it's going to be la-di-da. And then, girl, you got me. You got me so good. It's like, what is this? Why? So can you share a bit about how and why you decided to write this story? I know it's really personal and with the author's note at the end, but.
Yeah. With this one, I remember getting the idea for the title in the very end first, before I wrote the book. And I kind of built it around that, around the ending. And It's been so long. I honestly don't remember like how long I had thought about it or how long it took me to write. I just know that it was absolutely the hardest book I've written, because it's really the only one that is based, or was inspired by anything in my real life. I try to keep my books, not about my life, because my life is pretty boring. And, but I don't know, my mom's my best friend. She's my hero. And I kind of wanted to write a story that was inspired by her strength. I've always she's been like the number one role model in my life. And I'm like, I've written, I think at that time I'd written about 10 books, and I was like, how could I not write one, inspired by her? So I did. And I would send it to her as I wrote it, because, I kind of wanted her feedback just to make sure that I was kind of capturing the essence of what she went through. And I just remember after she read the scene where the casserole scene, because that scene was what inspired this book, because that's what happened between her and my dad. And she just called me and was crying so hard she couldn't even talk. And then she texted me. She ended up hanging up, and then she texted me and she was like, how do you know how it feels? And I just was like, oh, maybe I'm doing it right then. I'll keep going. And then she couldn't read anymore until I had finished the book, because, it was very hard for her. But I also feel like it was very healing for both of us.
Yeah. These characters, I mean, the depth to them, to every one of them. I mean, you had me feeling for Lily, and you had me feeling for Ryle, and they weren't one-dimensional. If they had been one-dimensional, I don't think this book would have worked as well as it had. So, I mean, just.
Right. And, I think that was kind of what inspired it, because, you kind of, when you hear about abusers, they're monsters, they're the bad guy. And I'm like, that's not how I grew up viewing my dad, like he was a good dad and he was in my life. And, I've never seen him lose his temper outside of the one time when I was 2 that I remember him with my mom. And so it was very hard for me to wrap my head around who he used to be when he was married to her. And also to wrap my head around the fact that my mother was in that situation. I was like, how? I could just, she's just such a strong, independent woman that I couldn't see her in a situation like that at all for any period of time, much less long enough to have 2 children with him, so it was in a sense kind of like an exploration of my parents and wanting to put myself in my mother's shoes and also in my father's shoes. And, because to me, he was a monster of a husband, but he was not a monster of a dad. And I kind of wanted to explore that in Ryle.
Yeah, and you did a great job. I mean, I think that you were right. Abusers are often painted as monsters, but that's not always how they are. And you just nailed it. I mean, I don't even want to tear up thinking about it. All of the feelings with this book, and you nailed it. So.
Thank you.
When you sit down to write books, and whether it's this one specifically or in generally, do you plot everything out, or do you just kind of let the story take you where it goes? What's your process look like?
I try to plot. I usually have a general idea of what the plot line is going to be for a book, but the beginning of what that looks like and the final result are 2 totally different things. I think this book, It Ends With Us, stayed pretty true to how I wanted it to be and how I had planned to outline it. But most of them don't. I always say like my outlines end up being longer than the actual books themselves, because, I'll end up writing like, when I start with chapter 1, I'll be like, okay, this is what's going to happen in chapter 1. And this is what's going to happen in chapter 2. Well, I'll do that with a whole book. But then when I actually write chapter 1, it'll take me in a whole nother direction. And so then I have to do that all over again and all over again. And but I've come to embrace that part of it as part of the writing process. Like I used to get very frustrated by it when my mind would go in a different direction, because I would think, oh, well, you have to write this way. Like you start at the beginning and then you end. And I'm like, no, it's all over the place as I write. So once I embrace that, I think it's made the writing process a little easier.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to do what works for you, and clearly it works for you. So, going back, we had talked that you don't just do one genre. I mean, so, you've got your last book written. How do you decide what comes next?
It's getting harder because I don't like to like look at what's popular or what's trending, because by the time you finish your book, the world is going to be on to something else. And so I always write what I want to read. And I guess I'm in a reading funk right now because I'm like, I have no idea what to write next. But you know, I do have, you know, I keep files and folders of ideas, and it's been pretty tough since COVID. I think 2020 was a very like slow year for me. I watched a lot of TV. And so when I do get stuck, like I don't beat myself up. I know that it'll eventually come. I know that a lot of people say that, you know, you need to write every day and write through your writer's block, but I'm not that way. If I'm not feeling creative, I'm not going to sit down and try to hit a word count. I'm going to go watch TV or drive around and listen to music, or, you know, take my kids to the movies. I try to consume other forms of art if I'm not in the mood to write. And it keeps it, I guess, exciting for me when I do sit down to write.
Yeah, that makes sense. Was one of the shows that you watched during the pandemic Schitt's Creek? Have you watched that?
I watched that before the pandemic. Yeah. I've been a huge Schitt's Creek fan for a while. Yeah.
Oh, me too. Laura asked, do you find writing your novels to be as emotionally draining as we do when we read them?
No. So this might come as a surprise to people, but I'm not an emotional person. It takes a lot for me to feel things. And I think that's why my books are emotional, because I just keep pushing it until I feel something. I'm like, oh, this isn't sad enough, or, you know, oh, you know, he's not moody enough. And so I just keep rewriting until I have that little sense of what I think readers might feel. And then every time I put a book out, I'm like, oh, this one's not sad. It's not going to make you cry. And then everyone's like, no, that made me cry. You're wrong. And I'm like, what part made you cry? What part was sad? So yeah, I'm also not a romantic person. I don't know where these books come from, because if I had to say I'm close to any book, it's probably Verity. And I don't know what that says about me, but.
That is another book that, I mean, if I had $1 for every time it gets recommended or discussed in our group, I would be well off. So I feel like it's an obvious question, but who is your favorite character in the book and why?
And It Ends With Us?
Yeah.
Definitely Lily, you know, just because she was kind of fashioned after my hero of a mother.
Yeah. So what do you hope that readers take away from Lily and Ryle?
I think just the sense of empathy when a woman is in that situation. I think I wrote this book because I was one of those people who was like, how could they stay? How could they get themselves in that position? You think when you're not in it that it's, you know, not as hard of a decision as it is. And I just wanted people to be more empathetic and patient with women who are trying to get out of those situations.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that what you just said rang true to me. It would definitely make me second guess things and have more empathy for anyone that I knew in that situation. So thank you for that. Do you think that we can expect to see more of these two, maybe in an upcoming book?
Well, it's not official, but I am trying to work out another. I've never, of all of my books, had more people request a follow-up than this one. They want to see Lily and Atlas, like some of Atlas's story and backstory. And so I have been playing around with that. Hopefully it will turn into something. And I haven't told people that I'm going to put that out, because I don't know if I will. If it's not something I'm proud of, then I'm not going to put it out, because I don't want, you know, I just don't think anything can beat the first one in the sense of, you know, what the first book meant to people. And so if I can write one that's worthy of a follow-up, or at least, you know, worthy of Atlas and Lily's time together, then hopefully I can give that to the readers, but I don't want to promise anything.
Fair enough. That's enough to give us a little bit of hope. But I totally understand if you're not proud of it, then, you don't have to publish a follow-up. So,
Right.
so we've seen a lot of books that come out with associated Spotify playlists lately. Do you have any songs that you would kind of set to It Begins With Us? Like, what would you include on a playlist?
There's
One or two?
actually a song that an artist wrote for it called She Dreams of Boston, and his name is Eric Baker. And he donated a lot of the profits from the first year to domestic violence shelters, but it's a great song. And he wrote it, based off the book. But that, and I listened to a lot of Airborne Toxic Event while I wrote this one. So y'all should check them out. They're great. But I don't really do playlists. I need to. I did do a playlist for this book that comes out in January. But yeah, I tend to write in silence. I can't listen to music while I'm writing. So I don't really make playlists like a lot of authors do.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, playlists, soundtracks, maybe. We were all super excited that Justin Baldoni is set to adapt the novel for film with his Wayfarer Entertainment Company. And I feel like I recently saw that there's a finished script.
Yeah, there is. I have not read it yet. So I'm just dying to get my hands on it. But they are doing some rewrites right now. And he said that, right now he could send it to me and I could read a good script, but he wants to send it to me when it's a great script. So I'm just trying to be patient and not bug them and let them, go about their process. So, he's been very, very interactive and informative with me and, kind of keeping me up to date on everything. And not a lot of Hollywood people will do that. So I absolutely appreciate how much he's involved me in the process so far. So I'm trying not to be annoying.
Well, do you have a list a mile long of people who you would love to have come in and read for parts?
I don't see people when I write, like they're just personalities. And so I see all these like fan castings and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that would work. That would work. I'm more of, I think so many people would fit these parts. And it's very hard for me. I just don't know. I think Zac Efron, I wish he could just play every part in every movie. I love him.
Yeah. And his movies always have a good soundtrack. So
yeah, they do. They really do. I wish Harry Styles would act more. That would be great to have him in something.
Well, so we've had a lot of questions coming in throughout our chat, and I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer Crowley, who's the founder of Peloton Moms Book Clubs, to see if we can get some of these asked and answered. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you.
Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for joining us. Very excited to have you. And actually, the first question is mine, because ironically, I'm just outside of Boston. So Jen is down in Texas with you, but this book was set in my turf. So I was just curious if you had any ties to Boston or Maine, where the book was set.
I actually don't. Maine is the one state really in this whole country that I have not been to, and I want to go so bad. But I was actually at a book signing in Boston, and someone in the audience asked me to write a book set in Boston as I was writing this book. And I go, okay, I'll set this one in Boston. And so it was actually a reader in Boston who wanted a Boston-based book. So that's why it's set in Boston.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's awesome. So that actually is a perfect segue, because Michelle asked, do influencers reach out to you, and how do you feel about that? So, you've already just said that a fan kind of influenced your setting for this book, but do you have a lot of interaction with your fans and such?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in the beginning, when I first started this career, I would not go to bed until I responded to every email and every inbox message and responded to every tag on Facebook. And of course, over the years, that's become impossible. And so it's been really kind of overwhelming this year. I think I just hit 500,000 followers today on Instagram. And there's just no way I can keep up with it now. And so I feel that's kind of been like the negative in all of this, is that I feel like I can't keep in touch as much as I used to with readers and influencers and, just the people who are putting these books out there. And so I'm working on that, but I just don't want to ever hand my social media over to someone else. I still do all of my social media. No one has access to it. And, I get probably a message a minute, and there's just no way I can respond to that throughout the day. And so I maybe get 1% of what comes in now.
So doesn't that, I just have to ask, because we kind of go through it with the Peloton Moms Book Club, like our batteries just drain when we post something important. We get pummeled, with the pings, and we both like,
I've had my notifications turned off for like 5 years now. There's no way.
Yeah, because it crushes your battery.
Yeah.
All right. So next question we have is Alyssa wanted to know, and you're probably going to say all of them, but which book has been your most favorite, and which has sold the most copies?
Oh gosh. I probably had the most fun writing Verity, just because it was so different from what I had written for all the years before it. It just came really fast and was just so much fun. And It Ends With Us means the most to me. So it's kind of different answers, but both of them have sold the most. I don't know which one has sold the most out of each other. I haven't computed that.
Okay.
Because one was self-published until last month, and the other one is with a publisher. So It Ends With Us, I haven't received a royalty statement for over a year, so I have no idea how many copies it's selling.
Something tells me that when that check comes, it'll be a nice one. A nice little
Well, I hadn't earned out from the last time. So like I still was not getting money for it, because you have to earn out your advance. Well, I feel like I have at this point. So yeah, I'm hoping I get a check for it this year. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not counting on it, but yeah, it'd be awesome.
So a lot of people do kind of want to know a little bit more about how you choose, and I think you mentioned it a little bit, but can you just explain a little bit? And we also are getting questions about, can we talk about Verity? And in kindness to Ariel, we did say we'd stay on task.
Y'all can ask about whatever you want to ask.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. Well, maybe we'll sneak some Verity questions in, but or we'll have you back to talk about Verity, which we would love. But how do you kind of navigate either self-publishing or choosing a publishing house? Because I think you actually have more than one publishing house as well.
Yeah, it's been a little crazy this year. So, I self-published my first 3 books, and then sold to Simon & Schuster, which is Atria, and stayed with them for several years, while also still every now and then putting something out on my own. It really just depends on the book, because Atria really wanted to make me like a women's fiction romance. They really didn't want YA or thriller or anything like that from me. And so when I would write a book that was like a different age range or a different topic or genre, I would self-publish that. But then I ended up leaving Atria when my editor left. The CEO left, the editor left, like they had a big changeover and I didn't know anyone. So I was like, well, now's a good time to try something different. And so I left and put Verity out on my own. And then I signed with an Amazon imprint. And then I went back to Atria, but also signed with Grand Central. So I feel like now I have 3 publishers. I went from having none to 3 in 1 year. So I'm just a little all over the place right now. We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, because then do you have demands from each publisher for, a next?
Yeah. Like today I had all 3 publishers like, hey, we want to do a virtual event in December. Another one was talking about a virtual event in January. And then Ariel's reminding me about all my virtual events tonight. And so now I have 3 publicists and 3 editors, and it's been crazy.
And then deadlines.
Yep, deadlines.
So let's see. Anne Marie wants to know, with her neighborhood book club loved your book and were shocked. We were shocked you could fall in love with an abuser. Have you written any books where the audience falls in love with a cheater? And I think what she means there is that we still, we're drawn to Ryle, even though in essence, he's not
think
necessarily.
Maybe someday. There is some like a love triangle in that one, and I kind of do the same thing where there's not really a perfectly good or bad guy in it. So I guess it just depends on the reader and if they want like that sort of thing and can forgive that sort of thing. And also there is a little bit of that in All Your Perfects.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those may be the only two. I can't remember.
Was there
not really
triangle in Ugly Bones?
Ugly Love?
No,
Heart Bones?
Heart Bones.
No.
Okay. Just couldn't remember.
So.
By the okay, so Ada wants, this is a long one, Ada. By the end of the book, Ryle seems to be left with an open ending. I'm not asking for a happy ending, but perhaps it's left open-ended as to where people battling mental health and anger issues proceed. The core of Ryle's anger stems from childhood trauma. It is human nature to hope for better. However, in this case, it's been said by you that rarely do people like Ryle change. What is the message here regarding mental health?
I don't know that there really was a message regarding mental health. I don't think Ryle necessarily suffered from a mental health issue. I think we all have traumatic pasts. I think Atlas also had a very traumatic childhood, but he did not turn out like Ryle. I think that a lot of people want to use that as the excuse for Ryle's behavior when Ryle may have turned out that way no matter what happened in his childhood. So I feel like different things happen in everyone's childhood, and how they react to that is really going to be different for every human. And for me, I didn't want to redeem him because, there was no reason my father was the husband he was. And he never got redeemed as a husband. He divorced 4 women, or 4 women divorced him. And he died alone, and he told me, he was like, his marriage to my mother, he knows he messed up, he made a mistake. And I just feel like some people aren't meant to be married and be in love. I don't think that every human has that right, like, I don't think Ryle deserves love, and I would never write a book to give him that. Maybe he is meant to be a good dad and a good neurosurgeon, but maybe being a husband just isn't for him. And I think that that's really the message I was trying to send. It wasn't really like anything about him needing to overcome anything from his past, because it is mentioned in the book that he's been in therapy since he was 6 years old. And so I didn't want to dive into that side of it. I didn't want to dive into the mental health side of it and the therapy side of it. That would have been a whole different book. And that wasn't my focus. My focus was Lily and Lily's journey. And Ryle is just, to me, very lucky that he didn't go to jail and lose his medical license.
Right. Well, and at the beginning, right, he really kind of held back, and it's, it was kind of some foreshadowing. It's almost like he knew maybe what he was capable of, and maybe that was why, subconsciously he avoided love for so long, and maybe that was what your intention was there. So Laura Beth would like to know, is there an author that you'd love to meet that you haven't had the opportunity to meet yet? And who are your inspirations?
I am obsessed with Emily Henry right now. I love her books and I would absolutely love to meet her. Tiffany De Bartolo, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. She's also another one. I just love her writing style. I have met her though, and she's probably even a better human than she is a writer. So I have a huge major crush on her. Yeah, there's a lot of authors, that I look up to and want to meet, but also I've been lucky enough that a lot of the people that I've looked up to in the past, I'm friends with now, you know, and this industry can be a very supportive, beautiful place. And yeah, my author friendships I cherish them a lot.
Yeah, we've definitely heard that throughout this year and a lot of our chats with female authors. It's a real, community and a group that lifts each other up
It
and
is
very supportive.
I'm not sure that being a writer was that way before social media. I think that publishers used to tell writers to try not to interact with their readers and I think they looked at other writers as more of competition. But since social media came about, I just feel like everything's changed and it's become a community and a very supportive one. And so I'm very thankful that I got into it when I did.
Yeah, and it's a way to share each other's stories and help each other through the social media. So that's actually kind of a perfect segue for us, because we always like to kind of wrap. We could probably chat with you all night, but I'm sure it sounds like you have other events, and we certainly don't want to keep you, but we would love to have you back to keep the conversation going and maybe revisit.
Talk about Verity.
Verity, exactly. But we always like to ask, what you're reading and recommending right now. And you kind of mentioned that you're in a little bit of a writer's block. So,
I know I already talked about Emily Henry, but I just received her arc for her next book called Book Lovers. And that's what I'm currently reading. And then Taryn Fisher, she's my best friend, and she has a book coming out in March, I believe. An Honest Lie is the title. And she just sent me that. So I've got like 2 on my TBR that haven't come out yet that I get to read early. So those are the 2 that are up next on my list.
And then maybe, do you recall something maybe that you loved and that you read maybe during the pandemic?
You're really putting me on the spot. These are books.
Sorry.
I don't know if you can see them that I've been into. Let me see. This one. I ordered a lot of the books that were really big on TikTok. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was great.
Yep.
And I read these 2, Such a Fun Age. That was really good. Mm-hmm. And The Midnight Library was really good. I've been on a reading kick in the past, and it's because of TikTok, y'all. TikTok isn't just recommending my books. I have spent so much money. I'll browse that app and see people reviewing books. I'm like, I need that. I have no room. Like they don't fit on my shelves anymore. So they're just piling up in corners around my office.
Yeah, we get that feedback a lot within the group as well. Yeah. Everybody's TBR stack is huge. So, well, I think we've already talked about it, but I'll let Jen wrap. But we always like to have you, plug if you want your Instagram. You already have, I think he said you hit 500,000 followers. That's fantastic. Yeah. But how to follow you, and if there's anywhere else you want anybody to follow you.
I think I'm just my name everywhere, Colleen Hoover. Usually when a new platform comes out, I will go and hurry up and grab my name. Even if I'm not on the platform. I have kind of a unique name anyway. It's not very common, so it hasn't been too difficult, but someone did get the Gmail before I did, so. But yeah, I'm just Colleen Hoover everywhere.
Can you contact them and ask them for it?
I thought about it, but not.
Yeah.
They probably, if they have the Colleen Hoover name, they probably are annoyed that I have everything else. So I'm like, I'll just let them have the Gmail.
And what about reminders of him? Do you have a plug for that? I've already pre-ordered it, so I'm just waiting for the publishing date.
Oh yeah, it comes out January 18th. I'm really excited about that one. And it's kind of sad. Heads up. I don't know. I was in a mood when I wrote that one. I started it out thinking I was going to write a romantic comedy, and it went in the opposite direction. So yeah, looking forward to that release.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks, moms, for joining us on a Friday night. This was super fun. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. And again, Colleen, we'd love to have you back to chat about Verity, but we will definitely continue to recommend It Ends With Us. We love this book. And
thank y'all so much. This was so much fun. And thank y'all for reading and recommending. And I just got a Peloton, so maybe I'll have to join the group.
yeah, please. Yeah.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.